The Memphis Grizzlies ended their regular season with a win over the Dallas Mavericks. Okay, the Grizzlies bench ended a regular season with a victory over the Dallas Mavericks bench, but vibes feel a little bit better going into the play-in game. We now know who that opponent is going to be. Grizzlies Warriors on Tuesday night. We're going to talk about that and so much more on this episode of Locked On Grizzlies. Let's lock in.
You are Locked On Grizzlies, your daily Memphis Grizzlies podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to a Monday episode of Locked On Grizzlies. It is I, Joe Mullinax, one of your hosts, and as always, so good to say one of your hosts because that means Damichael Cole, the Memphis Commercial Appeal beat writer for the Memphis Grizzlies, award-winning beat writer covering the Memphis Grizzlies for the Commercial Appeal there in Memphis, Tennessee, is with me. Always good to have Damichael with me and always good to have you with us on this journey that we like to call Locked On Grizzlies. Make sure you're liking, commenting, rating, reviewing, subscribing, wherever you get podcasts, Apple, Spotify, Amazon, YouTube. Also, make sure you're checking out LockedOnDaily.com. Lots of possible prizes for you if you subscribe to our daily newsletter that is free and between now and the end of the month. So LockedOnDaily.com. Make sure you're going and checking that out. Today's episode is also brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $250 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Damichael Cole, as always, it's so good to see you, my friend. I know that it's a crazy time of year for you, but in the content creator business, right? Like this is your actual day job. This is my side hustle, as I like to say every once in a while. Very happy that my hobby pays me. It's a good time for content creators, right? Like a very common misconception is we want the team to be bad. No, we want to keep having things to talk about or write about, that sort of stuff. And the Grizzlies have a pretty important nationally televised game coming up. That's good for you and I and anybody that's talking about basketball, writing about basketball. But again, you started out as a fan many years ago, right? I started out as a fan not too many years ago because I moved to Memphis in 2011. But we support the team because you grow up there, because I moved there. And I was telling you before we started recording, I feel like it hasn't been fun to watch Grizzlies basketball in some time. It was fun to watch the makeshift Grizzlies. It was fun to watch Lamar Stevens score 31 points on Sunday afternoon. It was fun to watch Yuki Kawamura have the game that he had. It was fun to see people on social media actually trying to talk themselves into Marvin Bagley III after a 25-12 game against the even more broken than usual Dallas Mavericks. Yeah. It was a fun basketball game. Even if the game was closer down the stretch, obviously blowouts, it's easy to say wins are fun. But even if it was a more competitive game, I would feel the exact same because they seemed to have a different energy. A weight was lifted. I don't know. You were in the building.
You know what it was?
For him. Yeah, I would love to hear it, please.
It was guys playing like they had bills to pay.
Yeah,
that's
funny how that worked.
That's what it was. It wasn't guys. I mean, look, no disrespect to the stars and the players who've kind of made the Grizzlies team, what they've become this season. But these guys, don't have the long term security and stuff like that that many of the Grizzlies players who were out on yesterday do. You look at someone like Cam Spencer. That was his last game of the season. Yuki Kawamura.
That
was his last game of the season. They're ineligible for the playoffs because they're on two-way contracts. So you won't see Cam Spencer play another game this season. You won't see Yuki play in another game this season. So that they knew that was it for them. And it was the last opportunity for them to show the Grizzlies, maybe even show the league, like, hey, this is what I can bring to the table. So you factor that in, you think about a guy like Marvin Bagley. You talked about him putting up 25 and 12. It's sort of an audition, right? He's on the last year of his contract. He's going to be a free agent at the end of this season. And it doesn't look like, at least at this time, that the Grizzlies are going to really bring him back. So it's kind of an audition for him. Hey, look, everybody around the league, look what I can do. Let me show you some of my game. Let me show you how I can finish around the rim. Let me show you my activity. So I think it was guys just playing like they had bills to pay. And then, of course, you mentioned the fact that, Dallas was resting some guys too. There was no Anthony Davis. There was no Derek Lively. There was no Klay Thompson. So they were missing PJ Washington as well. A lot of their heavy hitters, so to speak, were out as well. But I'm with you, Joe. It was sort of refreshing in a way to see the Grizzlies take care of business like that.
Hopefully we don't see the Mavericks again, because if the Grizzlies see the Mavericks again, that means that something went horribly wrong Tuesday night, and Memphis is hosting a do or die Friday night game against the winner of the Sacramento and Dallas play-in game that's coming up on Wednesday. So hopefully hopefully Anthony Davis is not coming through those doors again this season. But it's important to point out, as cool as it was to blow out the Mavericks, I think it was the biggest win against Dallas in Grizzlies history. It wasn't truly the Dallas Mavericks, but in fairness, it wasn't truly the Memphis Grizzlies. And we'll talk more about that here in a little bit. Is there anybody that you saw against the Mavericks? Because again, it was a makeshift crew, but you had Vince Williams Jr. out there. He was probably the one player most likely to see a significant role tomorrow night against the Warriors. He looked more like himself, a double-double, 11 rebounds, 12 points. And again, context matters, not the full-blown Mavericks roster, but there were flashes of the old Vince Williams Jr., including the 5 assists to no turnovers.
Playmaking, yeah.
That was very important as well, and I figured you would have noticed that too. But again, it's important to point out, the only player that really looked bad against the Dallas Mavericks was, unfortunately, my boy, Gigi Jackson. Gigi had a really rough night, 2 for 12 shooting, looked like he was uncomfortable, forced it. He had 3 assists, but 2 turnovers. Everybody else played really well for the most part. Even, my beloved John Conchar, he had 6 steals, right? He was really good anticipating passing lanes and getting in and using his hands actively in a positive way. Did you see anything that could be taken from the Sunday matinee game and applied to Tuesday evening's contest against the Warriors? Whether it's, Vince Williams Jr. looking better, John Conchar maybe showing enough to be in the mix. Did anything come about that made you think, that makes Tuesday a little more interesting?
Yeah, we'll talk about it as, kind of the series. Well, not the series in this case, but as the game unfolds or whatever. But, when you get to the playoffs, certain guys become X factors. And, you mentioned, we'll mention kind of deeper into that in the last segment. But I say that because if you go back to when the Grizzlies played the Timberwolves, it was like Brandon Clark, and it was Xavier Tillman came in and changed the tone of a game. But Steven Adams looked unplayable against the Timberwolves. But then you go to the next series against the Warriors, Steven Adams was one of the Grizzlies' best players when they finally put him back in the starting lineup. So sometimes it's a series-to-series shift. Or in this case, we're talking about a play-in game. So you're talking about one game. I'm looking for guys who can kind of do 2 things that'll eventually get an opportunity against a team like Golden State. One, you got to be active in the passing lane, someone who can read, offenses really well, because Golden State, they move the basketball and they move Steph Curry around a lot. Vince Williams described him as a runner. He said he's a runner. So I think when you factor that in, John Conchar possibly, you mentioned the 6 steals, is someone who can kind of help you, anticipate some of those passes and things like that. We're not talking about some extensive offensive role. I'm talking strictly on the defensive end, what he can do. And then Lamar Stevens, he was another guy. I talked to him after the game, and I was talking about his physicality. Like that's one of his strengths. That's kind of what he's been known for. I'm like, you feel like your game kind of, bodes well for the postseason. He was like, yeah, my game is made for the postseason because of that physicality that he plays with. And if you talk about Steph Curry and one of the knocks or what naysayers will say about Steph Curry is sometimes if you be a little physical with him, you can knock him off his mark a little bit. And the Grizzlies have, they don't have a lot of guys who are known for being physical on the perimeter, which is why they're in the play-in. But at the same time, Lamar Stevens is one of those guys who has that capability. Now, does he have the flat-out foot speed to stay in front of Curry from possession to possession? Probably not. But at the end of the day, he is another physical presence that you probably can mix in there at some point. So I look at it like that, like change of pace guys. They have options between those two. But yeah, Vince Williams, getting back to him, it was really good to see him kind of put together a good performance because they're going to need him. I mean, we've said it time and time again, but it's becoming more evident as the season goes on. They're going to need Vince Williams to be really good.
Hopefully it builds confidence. He can still do this, right? And again, Gigi Jackson, similar situation, a more serious injury, you could argue, with Gigi. But he's a guy that has lost some of that confidence. Hopefully he gets it back over the offseason. Vince Williams Jr. doesn't really have that luxury. At least the Grizzlies don't have that luxury. They need Vince Williams Jr. now. Let Damichael and I know. Hit us up on X at Damichael C for Damichael, at Joe Mullinax for me. Hit us up in the YouTube comments. Had a couple of people from our weekend episode, Damichael, say they were coming over to YouTube. They're usually audio downloaders, but they came over to YouTube because they wanted to chat it up with some fans. By all means, do that. Our YouTube comments have become more and more live as the last several weeks and months have played out. So let's keep that energy going. Make it almost a little, mini message board or Reddit. Is Reddit even a thing anymore? I don't know. Come back here on Locked On Grizzlies. I'm going to be old, speaking of old, and I'm going to argue the negatives of what were pretty clearly the right decision to rest the Grizzlies stars and starters going into the Mavericks season finale. We'll talk about that next. Stick around. Today's episode of Locked On Grizzlies is brought to you by Prize Picks. Basketball and hockey playoffs are heating up. Woo, I'm so glad Damichael finally, once again, the Grizzlies and my Washington Capitals are in the postseason. That means I've got lots of playoff sports to watch. There's no better way to turn sports knowledge into real rewards than Prize Picks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy. With Prize Picks, you simply pick more or less on at least 2 player projections, and you're in. You can even combine players across sports, basketball, hockey, baseball, or more, for your chance to win up to 2,000 times your cash. So if you want to go Ja Morant for more than 28 points, if you want to go Desmond Bane for more than 4 rebounds and connect that to Alex Ovechkin for more than 1 goal, you can do that. It's easy to set up lineups in under 60 seconds, and Prize Picks runs cool promos like Taco Tuesday. Very fitting for Memphis with the play-in, where they discount player projections up to 25% for even more value. Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONNBA to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNBA to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. Today's episode of Locked On Grizzlies is also brought to you by Wayfair. Spring is here, and that means it's home project season. My wife is feeling the heat when it comes to wanting to move things around the house. Whether you're refreshing a room, tackling a full renovation, Wayfair is the best kept secret for all things home improvement. From small updates like stylish cabinet hardware to major upgrades like new vanity sinks or outdoor lighting, Wayfair has quality products for every budget. They have free and fast shipping that makes life easier for you. No hauling heavy items from the store. They have top brands like GE and Moen at great prices, and shopping is pretty seamless. You find exactly what you need to fit your space and style. Wayfair makes home improvement easy. Get started now at wayfair.com. That's WAYFAIR.com. Wayfair, every style, every home. All right, Damichael. So allow me to be an old man for a moment. And you were making fun of me. You were making fun of me before we started recording, Damichael Cole. The plan as of now is for your boy, Joe Mullinax.
This is breaking news right here.
Beep, 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 breaking news. That was a pretty good breaking news beat.
I like it.
Breaking news: the Wednesday episode of Locked On Grizzlies post play-in is going to be hosted by me, Joe Mullinax. You might
great start too.
Every dayer. You might be sitting there saying, "Oh, Joe, that means you're going to be up to like 1 a.m. Can you do that? Are you capable? Don't you doubt me?" I'm like,
they don't remember the 25-year-old Joe Mullinax.
Yeah, I ain't as good as I once was, but I'm as good once as I ever was, to paraphrase the late great Toby Keith. So Toby Keith was a country singer, by the way, to Michael Cole, if you didn't know who Toby Keith was.
I didn't, but shout out to Toby, though.
Shout out to Toby Keith. Rest in peace. Point being, I'm going to be old in a different way. Since I'm staying up late this week, I'm going to be old in a different fashion. The way that everything played out Sunday, the Warriors going to overtime with the Clippers. Jimmy Butler plays 48 minutes, right? Curry and Draymond both play 38 minutes, I believe.
Yeah.
Jimmy Butler gets banged up at the end of that
Draymond too, with his
game.
neck. Yeah.
Draymond is sore, right? It's fair to say that the Warriors, which are a more veteran team to begin with, are not as healthy at the moment in terms of day-to-day game health, right? Injuries are different. That's not what I'm talking about. Then the Grizzlies, who rested their guys and go into Tuesday's game with fresher legs. There's no way the Warriors have just as fresh of legs as Memphis does going into Tuesday's game. But that's because the Grizzlies didn't play on Sunday afternoon. It was Fan Appreciation Day.
Yeah.
So while either way, there's going to be another Memphis Grizzlies home game, right? It's either going to be Friday night in the do or die play-in game for the 8th seed, or it's going to be game 3 of a playoff series if Memphis wins on Tuesday.
Yep.
Either way, there's going to be another Grizzlies home game this season. The fans that were there on Sunday for Fan Appreciation Day may not be there. So as cool as it was to watch Yuki Kawamura rack up some numbers, as cool as it was to see Lamar Stevens post 31 points and Jay Huff play pretty well. We didn't talk about him earlier in the show. He had a good game.
Really good game.
As that was cool. It was fun, but people probably bought tickets to see John Morant, to see Desmond Bane, to see Jaren Jackson Jr. So I want to stress the decision was correct, if that makes sense. The Grizzlies are in a better position, and we'll talk more about this today and tomorrow. They're currently 7-point underdogs to the Warriors, regardless, going into Tuesday's game. They're in a better position now than they were when Sunday started to win that game on Tuesday. That's just factually accurate, in my opinion. But it doesn't mean that it doesn't still stick in my craw that they went about it the way that they did and didn't play those guys at all. And again, I'm acknowledging that's me being the old school, maybe a little bit misguided in that old school mentality. Again, it was the right decision, but how do you feel about the way Memphis handled the end of the regular season?
The only thing that would make me agree with you on the fact, well, I wouldn't even say agree because you just said it was the right decision. The only thing that would make me kind of lean towards the standpoint of they shouldn't have rested guys would be the fact that guys are still adjusting and getting comfortable playing with an interim coach. So you're talking about all they've talked about as of late is time is of the essence. We got 9 games, with this coach or whatever the case may be, and you basically just gave up one of them. So that was another opportunity to kind of continue to get comfortable and some of Isolo's principles and things like that. But with that being said, I do agree with the decision simply because it was a long shot, to begin the day that you were not going to be the 8th seed and it'd be the 7th seed. And clearly as the results played out, that's exactly what happened. You needed Minnesota to lose against the Utah Jazz. And that's just a tall task, worst team in the West against a team that, is pretty healthy for the most part in Minnesota. So you rest some guys. And here's the thing about resting the guys too, because now Joe, this is where you use your coaching senses, so to speak, because we asked Tomas Isolo about this before the game, and he basically said that the back-to-back 3 games in 4 days took a toll on the players. Now I do think there is definitely some truth to that, with the way Grizzlies players saying, hey, we're not going to complain. Usually when someone says they're not going to complain, they're just trying to hold in the complaint because they don't want you to hear the complaint. But they say we're not going to complain, but we're going to go out here, we're going to go to Denver and play this game. But it was 3 games in 4 nights. There was some travel involved, and this was the way of saying, hey, look, we got to get off our legs if we want to be as fresh as possible, because you got to take this long flight. It's going to be over a 4-hour flight going over to San Fran. So it's going to be a long flight. And now you can kind of rest a little bit. And you mentioned the fact that Golden State may be a little bit more beat up. While that is probably true, the advantage is that Golden State lost its last game at home. So they don't have to get on a flight and leave a different city and come back to San Francisco. They're already there. So they just went home, went to their beds. They'll get back up in the morning, probably do some recovery stuff and whatnot, while the Grizzlies will be flying all the way out to the West Coast. So there's some built-in advantages there, but there should be, because Golden State is the 7 and the Grizzlies are the 8. But with all that being said, I do think, it was the right thing for the Grizzlies to do. It was very long shot that you get the number 7 seed. And with that kind of factored into the decision, you got some guys that have, had some beatings, over the course of this season. And it became sort of a meaningless game in a way, especially with the Mavs deciding to sit their guys too, as we mentioned, Klay Thompson, P.J. Washington, Anthony Davis, Derek Lively. They sat all those guys. So at that point, it was just a toss-up on who was going to win. And clearly, the Grizzlies got it done.
Yeah, I do think that, again, I as a fan, I feel for the fans that went to that game and wanted to see those guys play. However, how crappy would it have been, even in this long shot situation that the Memphis Grizzlies now find themselves in, if John Morant rolls his ankle in this
people would be cutting up.
Right? They would be furious. Tomas Isolo, they'd be furious at why did these guys even play in the first place? So I want to stress, it was the right call to do what they did. I just have a soft spot for the folks that went there expecting to see.
I wonder how you felt when Mikal Bridges checked into the game and intentionally fouled a guy so he could keep his consecutive games played streak alive, and then checked right out. Didn't you love that, didn't you?
Yeah, for the love of the game, right? For the love of the game. Well done, Mikal Bridges. When we come back here on Locked On Grizzlies, we're going to close out this episode of the show, turning our attention to the Warriors, a bit of a preview of all the preview content we have coming your way for Grizzlies Warriors play-in special, talking X Factors. We're going to talk about that next. Stick around here on Locked On Grizzlies. Today's episode of Locked On Grizzlies is brought to you by FanDuel. The NBA playoffs are almost here, and FanDuel is giving new customers an incredible way to get in on the action. Right now, when you join FanDuel and place your first $5 bet, you will get $250 in bonus bets if your bet wins. FanDuel makes betting so easy, whether it's picking your favorite team, diving into player props, even sports like golf. The Masters was more fun to follow, following along with Rory and his odds going up and down through his crazy final Sunday. From three-pointers to steals to assists, FanDuel has so many ways to bet your favorite player props. Plus, after the game tips, you can combine live prop bets into a same-game parlay for a chance to win big. Do not miss out as the playoffs approach. Head to FanDuel.com and claim your $250 in bonus bets today. All right, Damichael. So Grizzlies, Warriors, a little bit after 10 o'clock Eastern. That's 7:10-ish Pacific, 9:10 Central Time.
Yep.
Bottom line is Memphis and me, make sure you got some caffeinated beverages over the next couple of days, getting ready for Grizzlies, Warriors play-in basketball. The Grizzlies deserve to be here, I think is important to point out. They are 13 and 17, in the last 30 games. They are the team. Everybody predicted that somebody was going to fall from grace in the Western Conference, and that was the Memphis Grizzlies. The second team, who had a little bit less of a fall from grace, is the Golden State Warriors. That loss last week to the San Antonio Spurs, biting them in the butt. It's kind of fitting that Harrison Barnes, old friend of the Warriors, Harrison Barnes, had a direct hand in their demise. That was a really bad loss for them, and that's why Golden State finds themselves in the predicament that they are in. Golden State is 0-3 in play-in games. One of those losses, Damichael, if you remember correctly, I know you do.
I do.
Came at the hands of the Memphis Grizzlies a couple of years ago. So lots of history here, obviously, lots of storylines that we're going to be able to dive into. We're going to have a crossover episode of the podcast with the Locked On Warriors host. Obviously, we'll have a podcast on Tuesday previewing the game from all angles. I'm going to do my best to get on the West Squad show. I know how those of you that are everydayers here at Locked On Grizzlies get a little bit annoyed with the West Squad show at times. I'm going to do my best to hop on that. Lots of content coming your way. Of course, the Locked On Daily newsletter as well. Make sure you're subscribing there. But our first bit of preview business to attend to Michael, is play-in X factors. Things that going into this one and done, you win, you're the 7th seed against the Houston team who Ime Udoka came out and said, oh, no, we're playing this thing. We're in, baby. We're trying to compete in this last game. And then his team laid a big fat egg against
they competed, all right.
Yeah. So Houston probably is a 2 seed that the same way that people looked at the Memphis Grizzlies as a 2 seed a couple of years ago.
Exactly.
They're potential barbecue chicken. I think the Warriors probably see them as that. The Grizzlies, not so much. At least they shouldn't see them as that. But point being, you could be the 7th seed and have the rest of the week off, essentially. Yeah. Or you could be looking to a do-or-die game, and your reward is playing the Oklahoma City Thunder. Surprise! Congratulations. So this is a pretty big game. My X factor for the Warriors is going to be my boy AirPods. If you're an everydayer, I wanted AirPods a couple of years ago or a year ago. I think it was a couple of years ago. That was my guy in the draft. He had the best plus-minus of any Warriors player against the Clippers on Sunday, a +12 for the Golden State Warriors in his 43 minutes played. Do the math on that, partner. That means in the 10 minutes, he did not play in the game. The Warriors were -17, something along those lines. So AirPods is not just a 3-point shooter, not just a scorer. He can rebound, 7 rebounds against the Clippers, 4 assists, 2 steals, 1 block. He does a lot of what Memphis needs Vince Williams Jr. to do, right? In terms of being an all-around kind of player. He probably has a little bit better handle than Vince Williams Jr. does as well. So for me, obviously people are going to talk about Jimmy Butler, Draymond Green, Steph Curry. We're going to cover all those guys in in depth over the next couple of days, I'd imagine here. But for me, AirPods is the guy that really, could kill the Grizzlies if Memphis throws all their eggs in the big three of the Golden State Warriors basket.
Yeah, he's a solid player, and he's one of those guys that I could foresee the Grizzlies saying, "Let's make him beat us," and that he'll have his opportunities or whatever the case may be.
It's either him or Moody, right? The way that they started against the Clippers, it's one of those two.
Mm-hmm, exactly. I think those guys will be the players they say, let's make them beat us, not Steph, not Jimmy in particular, but I think he's an excellent one. I'm gonna go a different route, and I'm gonna go to the front court. What about Quentin Post? He's a guy, and I talked to some people out there in the Bay Area a little bit recently, and they'll point out the fact that he doesn't have the games, like he hasn't played a lot of games, but his impact, especially as a floor spacing big, has been really good. And if you think about the type of bigs that can give the Grizzlies trouble, are those type of bigs who are going to bring, Zach Edey away from the basket, force him to defend on the perimeter. And a lot of times we don't see, Zach does kind of late closeouts in those situations. Post is a guy that can really knock down those shots. And Draymond Green, look, we talk about his lack of offense. Look, he missed a blank layup at the rim or Golden State. We might be talking about the Clippers right now if he didn't miss that layup. But he's knocked down 3-point shots. So when you factor in that, Quentin Post and his ability to stretch the floor, I want to see kind of how his impact is going to be when he comes into the game, because he has the size, he has the versatility, and he's the guy where I could see the Grizzlies, giving him a little bit of room, and it's a make or miss game. If he makes a couple, it could be troublesome.
Draymond Green is a fascinating turnkey kind of guy in this one, because logic would stand to suggest that you just let Draymond shoot, right? He's not an offensive weapon in that traditional sense in terms of scoring. But against the Clippers, Draymond Green was 4 of 6 from 3.
He's been knocking them down. Yeah,
he has that capacity, and I think that it's going to be really interesting to watch how Isolo kind of schemes and game plans against this Golden State team. Obviously, Memphis saw Golden State recently. It was a competitive game until it wasn't. I'm curious to see what adjustments are made and how they utilize a player like a Jaren Jackson Jr. defensively, how they try to hide Ja Morant in terms of where he defends. Ja has been one of the better defenders for the Grizzlies this season. If you look at various defensive metrics, he's had a better year than people would be expecting of him. Yeah. But you want Ja to be the offensive weapon, right? You want to try to minimize the work he has to put in defensively because you want him to be that dude on the offensive end. So how Isolo really reacts to the Warriors, that coaching matchup, is another X factor for me. And it's unique because the way that the season has played out for Memphis, obviously with the coaching change and all that sort of stuff, there's not many teams that Isolo has gotten a look at, right? There's not many teams that have played the Tomas Isolo version of the Memphis Grizzlies. Ironically, one of those teams is the Golden State Warriors. So he has the advantage of being able to utilize previous tape and see how he can tweak things. Zach Edey had 16 rebounds against Golden State. Ja had 36 points, 6 assists. How does that improve? How do the Warriors try to limit that? What wrinkles do we see in this round 2 matchup? It's kind of exciting when you put it that way.
It's so many exciting factors to break down as we talk about this game over the course, of the next day or so. But yeah, I think, a big one for me is going to be Jaren Jackson Jr. staying out of foul trouble. And look, here we are having this conversation again, right? Like this feels like one we talk about going into every playoff run, of the past, whether it was a couple years ago, whether it was the year before that. He needs to be on the floor. And who in this league understands Jaren Jackson Jr.'s value, but also understands his liability is his fouling as much as anyone in the league?
Draymond Green. 100%.
He understands it as much as anyone. And that is one of Draymond's biggest strengths. His IQ is there. And you tell me Draymond's not going to be telling his players, give Jaren a pump fake you might even, do a little slight flop because it's Jaren and his reputation. You might get away with it. Now, it's just reality of the game. I think Jaren's going to have to be smart. Jaren's going to have to be cautiously aggressive because at the end of the day, you'd rather Jaren, be playing in the fourth quarter with 3 fouls than be playing, in the second quarter with 3 fouls. So I think when he's on the floor, he's a nightmare matchup for this team. Draymond is gifted as a defender, but we've seen Jaren go to work against him a few times. And I mentioned Quentin Post, the young guy. He ain't ready for Jaren Jackson. He ain't ready for that matchup. And Kuminga has the athleticism, but Jaren's got the power, right? So when you factor all that in, Jaren has some matchup advantages in this game, but he's got to be on the floor. He's got to be on the floor.
100%. And we will talk more about that and then some over the next 24 hours or so here on Locked On Grizzlies, leading into Grizzlies Warriors again, 9:10 roughly Central Time on, I believe, TNT.
Yep, TNT.
And it's just a national game. No Pete, no Brevin. It is all national all the time. The eyes of the NBA world, for those that are able to stay up late, will be on Grizzlies Warriors on Tuesday night. Hopefully your eyes and ears will be on Locked On Grizzlies, our YouTube channel, wherever you get podcasts, Apple, Spotify, Amazon, YouTube. We will have tons of content coming out over the next couple of days throughout this week. Because, again, if Memphis loses on Tuesday night, that's not the end, right? They still have another game on Friday where it's do or die, trying to be the 8th seed against whoever wins the Sacramento-Dallas game on Wednesday. So we got you covered all week long. Make sure you're with us each and every step of the way. Again, YouTube, Apple, Spotify, Amazon, wherever you get podcasts. Make sure you're subscribing to the Locked On Daily newsletter as well. We have an amazing, amazing opportunity. The Grizzlies have secured a play-in spot. You can stay in the know with the Locked On Grizzlies podcast newsletter and get a chance to win one of these amazing prizes, a $2,500 Best Buy gift card to upgrade your sports cave, $300 Game Time gift card, $200 Fanatics gift card. If you sign up between April 7th and April 30th, 2025, you can be entered into the drawing. Our Grizzlies newsletter delivers real-time updates, expert analysis, and playoff insights tailored for you. Subscribe now for free to Locked On Grizzlies podcast newsletter. Stay ahead as the season unfolds. Subscribe today. Click on the link in the description to enter. On our Tuesday edition, tons of content. And again, Damichael going to be on the ground there for Grizzlies practice, Grizzlies interactions. You're going to be able to give us how the players and coaches are feeling going into the game on Tuesday, Damichael. Be safe in your travels, sir. I know you're going to have a good time.
Yeah, long flight out to San Fran always, but looking forward to getting out there. It feels like we've been out there so much since I've been on this beat. I think I've been in San Francisco more than anywhere else. But anyways, it'll be fun. But yeah, we'll talk to Isolo later. So looking forward to kind of bringing that into the show as well. Because look, the two previous games against Steph Curry, and we'll dive deeper into it. But it's going to be interesting to see how Steph had 15 points in the first 2 games when Taylor Jenkins was the head coach and Jalen Wills did a really good job. And then in that last game, he had 52 against, because he didn't play. He missed the game earlier. So he's only played the Grizzlies 3 times. 15 combined points in the other 2 games, 52 in the most recent one when Isla was the coach.
Steph Curry is an interesting X factor in and of himself. His numbers against the Clippers were not so good. He shot 7 for 12 from 3, as you would expect Steph to shoot. 6 assists, 8 turnovers for Steph Curry against the Clippers at a -16. Steph Curry was the lowest single game plus-minus player on the Golden State Warriors, -16 in his 38 minutes played, something that we'll dive into on our Tuesday episode of Locked On Grizzlies. Thank you so much for being with us on our Monday edition of the show. He's Damichael. I'm Joe. Stay locked in. Again, we got our West Squad show. We got a crossover episode with Locked On Warriors. And, of course, our Tuesday episode previewing Grizzlies Warriors. Make sure you're with us. See ya.